Hello, Stephen Long here, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Gaston's Great podcast. This week's episode is part one of a two-part recording in an effort to keep each episode a little shorter. Thanks again, and we hope you enjoy it. Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 130, at least that's what I think it is, of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long. We're coming to you once again from the international headquarters of GSM Services. We simply believe in discussing more of the reasons why Gaston's great. We are highlighting another great organization this week as we highlight the Carolina Street Art Collaborative. We have Kathleen Finch, Kathleen, with us today. Kathleen is the founder and president of the organization. Kathleen, it's great to have you on, and welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here.
All right, very good. So, as usual, we're going to get right to it. But before we get talking about the collaborative, Kathleen, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about yourself, anything that you'd like to share before we get into the meat of the topic.
Well, I will say I've been mostly in Gaston County since 1999. So okay. I've been hanging out for a hot minute, and I've seen all the growth and the beautiful things that Gaston County has gone through, and trying to preserve some of its history as well too. So all kinds of beautiful efforts in all regards. So I'm a nurse by trade. I enjoy the living daylights out of taking care of other people. But during the pandemic, I think we all experienced a rough spot, emotionally, physically,
yes.
all of the ways.
It was a unique time. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, it was tough for a lot of people, and especially those working in healthcare. I think we really
absolutely.
got hit very hard. Our organization, we deal in art, of course, but we speak very frankly about mental health and the importance of art in that respect. Art offers an avenue for healing. There's been some studies out there that have shown that both the consumption and the creation of art reduces stress hormones in the body, like cortisol, which can wreak all kinds of havoc physically. And I've experienced it. I felt it. I created a lot of art during the pandemic, fell back into it. And, I just was so very compelled to give back because I felt like it was something that truly saved my life. I really struggled. And so here we are going into year 3 with our nonprofit, and we do murals, workshops, art markets, big events. I mean, you name it. We collaborate with anybody and everybody and try to really help the artists attain and maintain a sustainable living in the arts. All
right, so that's a good segue. So, the main point here, again, to remember is we want to talk about your organization, what you're doing. So how... that was kind of a super abridged version of maybe how you got it started. Maybe get a little more detail. How, maybe your background with art before this, and then, what's the specific mission of the organization, and then we'll just get into, maybe some more. I got some more specific questions for you.
Well, so my background in the arts, a little bit, because we used to go to church together forever ago. So I was in plays, so the theater. I'd always written poetry, as long as I can remember, and written short stories and all that. But for the most part, my art was in that realm. I enjoyed the living daylights of that in my younger years. But then you get married, you have kids, you do all the things. You have to get a job. You got to financially float the boat. And so I did all those things for a long time, and I put art to the side and said, okay, well, this is just something for funsies. This is,
sure.
And then, again, back to the pandemic, as much as I hate to, but it's truly the impetus of all this. We had to put a mirror up to ourselves. We had all this quiet time, right? and so it caused a lot of us to do a lot of self-reflection. I mean, as many sad stories and truly tragic stories that there were during the pandemic, there's also so many stories of growth. Your podcast for one, right? Yeah. So there's so many stories of growth, and people said, you know what, I can't be in this space anymore. I've got to make some major life changes, a lot of times for the positive. And it's produced all kinds of art and innovation, and there's all kinds of beautiful things that have manifested from it. So.
Okay. Yeah. Very, very good. So how do you go about starting something like this? Was it were you involved with a group of artists already? Did you have this vision, or you had seen it done somewhere else, or kind of how
It was a wild ride.
Okay, all right.
It was a wild ride. So I got the quote unquote OG COVID. And I was down for the count for 2 weeks. Now, you know, I taught aerobics classes. I've lived many lives, as far as my career path is concerned. But I've always, physical fitness has always been a big thing. I think that mind-body connection,
sure,
is super important. And so I couldn't move for 2 weeks. I had the really bad, body aches when I had that old version of COVID. And I'm a very fidgety person, let me tell you. I can't sit still to save my life. And my husband, who's a banker by trade, but also an artist, draws mostly, but he's, as you'll find with many artists, if you have this conversation, they're hoarders of supplies. So we had a ridiculous amount of canvases and acrylic paints, and I'm sitting there and I can't breathe right, I can't move right, nothing working right. And I had to do something. I had to occupy my brain. So I sat there at the table, and for 2 weeks, I just banged out a ton of art. And it brought up stuff in me that I hadn't played around with for, like almost 20 years, a really, really long time. And I, again, during the pandemic, we were all looking for a way to reach out, especially if you're a real social being. Like, you just have to find a way to connect with other human beings. And, I'm that way. I love people. And so I got on Instagram. We all got kind of sucked into the social media. And I am 47 years old. I was a teenager in the 1990s. So I grew up in the mix of a lot of hip hop and rap. I love the clothing of the time. I love the art of the time. It was something I was really into. So I'm, futzing around looking for that kind of stuff on Instagram. And, I was tired of the negativity that I saw on Facebook. So I was like, let me play with Instagram. It's pictures, it's beautiful art. And came across a gallery in Noda, actually in Charlotte, called Tack Gallery.
Okay.
And they specifically focused on street and graffiti art. They had, before they even let a single solitary piece of artwork don its walls, they had national artists come in, so muralists from all over the country come in to paint its walls before there was a single piece of consigned art on the walls. And so it was just beautiful. I was seeing this develop on Instagram. I was watching them paint the walls. I thought, I just have to go to this place. Like I didn't have a choice in my mind. And so I did just that. I reached out. I messaged, the owner of the place. Say, hey, I got all this art that I made when I was sick. I'm trying to get rid of. It's clogging up my house. And he said, yeah, we can sell it here. And through that gallery, I connected with a lot of other artists of that type of genre. And saw all the amazing, they run the gamut from digital art to fine art to stencil art to mural art. I mean, these are exceptionally talented people that unfortunately, there's kind of, with street art sometimes there's a, certain connotation, shall we say, but exceptionally talented people and with huge hearts, like some of the most kind individuals you'll ever meet, who also talk very frankly about mental health, because art is an avenue for healing in that regard. So we got together, and I was super excited about it, and I was selling some art, but, there's still this thing called I am married with 3 children, and I have a job as a nurse.
Yeah.
I have these responsibilities in my life, and a lot of these art openings were very adult focused. Like, you couldn't bring your kids, it wasn't as family focused. And so I said, well, let's do something different. Let's create something that can be family focused. So we had our very first event at Cavendish Brewing. Gosh, I want to say it's going on 3 years ago now in November, called Brews and Hues. And we had musical performances. We had breakdancing. We had free art vending to give the artists a leg up. And it live paint, all of that. So it was fantastic. It went really well. Everybody could bring their kids and their dogs because it was Cavendish Brewing. And it was such a positive thing. We wanted to do more and go a little bigger with it. But in order to do that and grow in that type of arena, you had to form an arts nonprofit because, people, it'd be super great if I could say, give me money, without a benefit for you. But, that's it as a nonprofit. It is a tax benefit for people to donate to your institution.
Sure.
And so that's how it all began. So.
All right. So it's always, I always find it interesting, the background of how, all kinds of organizations get started, right? It's typically somebody with a vision or something wants to accomplish or help others or fill a need within, the local community. So kind of, you've mentioned earlier, you mentioned some events, or just maybe the best way to ask this question is what's the day in the life of the organization, or what's going on every month? And what kind of initiatives and I'm not sure programs is the right word, but just tell us about what's kind of going on a week to week, month to month basis with the organization.
Well, I have to say I am very proud of Gaston County.
Okay.
They really, they've, especially in the past, I would say 5 years, and it might have been the same impetus. It might have been the pandemic that put them in that position, but they see the importance of art, so much so that they've formed an offshoot of City Council called the Arts Committee.
Okay.
And it's done lots of great things in Gaston County. Helps out with Gaston Max. I know the Keep Gastonia Beautiful people are heavily involved in that. Also the fall event, but and I know there's the event around bees. I can't remember the name of it. Julia would be very upset with me for forgetting the name right now. But they're doing lots of really great things with art in Gaston County, and they and another arts institution, Gaston Arts Council, has really kind of stepped up their efforts to try to add more and do more with the arts, because they see the value of it in the community, because it's a many-fold value. I'm a nurse, so I talk about the health aspect of the value of art, but it has huge economic impact. When people come to a city that's rich in the arts and culture, they're like, ooh, I want to spend money here, right? I want to come back here. I might even decide to vacation here, right? So from an economic standpoint, it really, really helps the county to bring more art and art events in the county. So I became involved with the Arts Committee, and then also became involved with the Gaston Arts Council. We received a grant with the Arts Committee, and we'll be working with Alchemy Co-working to paint a mural on the back of their establishment. That'll be coming up next month, so we're very excited about that. We received a grant from Gaston Arts Council to conduct art workshops and art markets, so we've been doing that throughout Gaston County at Cavendish Brewing and Viva Chicken. So we've taught people how to do art, and we've given artists opportunity to get a leg up by giving free vending at those events. We also have a creation station, which is just simply a space where people can explore and just create things that they can, warm their heart with. But yeah, we've done a lot of really great things within Gaston County. We'll be having, it's our 4th year of Brews and Hues at Cavendish coming up this November. So, we're excited as to where it will grow. We also do some work in Mecklenburg County. We have
we don't hold that against you, I guess.
Yeah, I know. So we're a little bit of everywhere, but similar things, And it's been really beautiful, because it's definitely, there's so many artists, with full families doing all kinds of great things, and we want to give them an opportunity to make a living doing this, phenomenal thing that they're capable of. And I feel like we've been very successful. Last year, we were able to pay artists $74,000 for what they do. So
okay, wow.
I'm very proud of that.
What about another question that we like to ask is, in your time, last 3 or 4 years, does a situation stand out? A family, an individual, or just something, obviously without sharing any specifics, but that you said, wow, this is the reason that I started this. Something that just says, wow, that this individual went from here to there, and now he's able to do more, he or she is able to do more art or whatever. Anything that comes to mind, or is that just I'm putting you too much on the spot for that one?
Oh, no,
Okay.
not at all. Yeah, we definitely see a lot of that because we're, although we are street art based, we're a collaborative, so we literally work with anyone and everyone.
Right.
As long as you got a good heart and you're a kind person, I'm down. We'll work with you. And so because of that, we're connected with a lot of other arts organizations.
Okay.
And so I had a friend of mine, and this is more friendship and not necessarily family, but the family part ties in too. So poetry, I believe, is a great extension of the soul. It is a beautiful place to explore all the emotions and everything we are as human beings. And there's a group called Guerrilla Poets, very interesting name, run by Shane Manier. She's a phenomenal human being. And I went to a couple of her poetry workshops to find a space of healing during the pandemic. Connected with a few of the poets in that group and befriended them. And two in particular, Tariq Kiley and Coach Joss Smalls, fantastic human beings. They had a whole festival for poetry. They had everything.
Okay.
They had it all planned out, ready to roll. They applied for a grant, and then the pandemic happened again, right? So the festival, it just died. It just sat there. And we were talking about other artistic opportunities. Tariq and I were just kind of having a conversation. And, he told me about this whole fully formed event that he had that just kind of died on the vine. And I said, well, we're an arts nonprofit, dude. Like we can help you. We can,
sure,
do the grant,
revive it, right?
We can revive that. And so we did, and we received a grant. It was an opportunity grant through the city of Charlotte. So we put on a 2-day festival. We had Jackie Shelton Green, who is the poet laureate of North Carolina.
Okay.
Jay Ward, who's the poet laureate of Charlotte. We had all kinds of amazing local poets come out for this 2-day event that was part of a larger festival called Boom that's in Camp North End in Charlotte. So it just... I'm a big fan of helping people live out their dreams. And whenever I see something, that has this huge potential and it's just part of their spirit and who they are as a human being, and I know all the good that can come from helping them, I'm like, let's do this. The worst thing you can do is try, right? And then so we tried and it happened.
Yeah, yeah.
It was amazing. So, but yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, too many times I think people, I don't know, they don't try or they don't see how something can come to fruition as opposed to, but when you have other people around you that can, encourage them and just get them to realize, what? So what if it doesn't work? Let's go try it anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Because it's more about the journey. Have you ever heard of the book The Alchemist by Paul Coelho? Yeah, great book.
In fact,
right?
if you walk to my office now, it's on the bookshelf.
No.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the Four Agreements, another good one too. Yep. But definitely, more so with The Alchemist, that's truly all it talks about. That's the journey. You worry less about the outcome and just more about the people along the way, and the impact positively that you make as you step through this world. And when you focus on that, you worry less about the outcome because it's not really important.
Yeah, I think here in the U.S. maybe we get our culture a little too much worried about like there is some destination that we're going to get there and we're going to be happy or we're going to feel better, and really it's I don't know that it ever happens. I mean, there's accomplishments along the way. Yeah. But it's celebrate that, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Swim in that joy, be happy in that space, but it's not guaranteed. So we have to take those morsels that we can and enjoy the journey. And even when something doesn't work out, even you've worked your tail off and it just goes burn, right? That happens too.
Oh, sure.
But when
it's also how you learn, though.
Yes, right. Yeah. And you change your focus and be like, well, think about all the great people I met along the way, all the great connections, and was able to help people in this way, or they were able to help me. But positive things can come out of very negative things sometimes too.
Yeah. So you may have already answered this next question, but with something that you've already said, but I'll ask anyway. So, is there something that stands out, something that you haven't shared that maybe you're most proud of accomplishing? with this work over the past 3 or 4 years?
Well, most proud. Bringing people together. I'd have to say that probably more than anything else. So the art world can be a little cliquey. It's kind of like high school, just a hair bit, and I'm not that. I'm just not that human being. I think there's a lot of beauty in difference, right? My husband and I have had this conversation many times, but it used to be that presidents, right, who were like one that was Republican, one that was Democratic, right, could, their former presidents could like hang out and be friends, and have, conversations. So even though their views are very, very different, right, they were still able to find common ground and hang out with each other, right? So art is the language that we all speak, right? It's the language that we all speak. So we can have some very different views on life. We can be, anything, right? But we can still manage to come together and find common ground in that space. And that we have accomplished so much of that. Like the diversity of the people that we have involved in our events is huge. I mean, I get a lot of grants ask you the question, tell us about the diversity of your group. And I was like, everybody, and just everybody. Like I get into all the minute details, but truly, we work with anyone and everyone because when it comes down to it, we're all human beings. We're trying to survive on this planet, right? And let's just try to give each other a leg up. You can agree to disagree and still get along. And I firmly believe that.
Yeah, there's something about where our world has, especially here in the U.S., it seems like the last, I don't know how many years, but if you disagree, there's something wrong with that. It's interesting, isn't it, how that has changed? Because to your point about presidents, I remember reading multiple stories about Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, who were on the opposite sides of the aisle when Ronald Reagan was president, but then they would go out and hang out together all the time.
Yeah. Best buddies.
It's interesting just how it's interesting how those things, and that's really the way it should be. But
talking about difference helps us be better. I know that sounds true because when you talk about it, then you might understand a little bit more of that other person's perspective, and then it helps you with whatever your plans are in life,
Absolutely.
So it's a level of understanding. I think that's another, life journey thing, that's more important than the outcome, not necessarily changing things, but just understanding each other.
Absolutely. So this is that classic question too about here you are a few years in, and I'm going to assume that's a fine, by the way.
Sorry about my phone over there. I got fined.
That's a $10 fine to the organization of your choice.
I got a lot of good ones I can give to.
Another thing that we've experienced as we've talked to so many organizations over the past 3.5 years almost now, where they are now maybe went so far beyond or just not where they expected when they started something like this. So looking ahead another few years, 3, 4, 5, even 10 years from now, what do you envision, the collaborative looking like, or is there any big plans that you have, or you're already gone further than you imagined to begin with?
I like, it would be nice to have a physical space. We are nebulous now, which, has its positive, sure. things. We don't have to pay for a roof over our head and utilities and all of those things. So that's a plus note, I can work from home. I can, that kind of stuff is nice, or remotely. But yes, I would love to be able to offer inexpensive studio space to artists in Gaston County. That is, there's a shortage of it in Charlotte. It's getting better. There's some studios out there like the VAPA in Charlotte that offers inexpensive studio space. Activation Studios, which is just starting to get going now. They also offer inexpensive space. But down the road, we have, that 5 to 10 year plan. We would like to be able to offer that in Gaston County. So that's it, man. Give artists a leg up so they're not paying a ridiculous amount of money for space.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's obviously would be a huge thing. So thanks so much for listening to today's episode, which was part 1 of a 2-part recording. Please tune back in next week to hear the second part. Thanks again, and please continue to spread the word about the Gaston's Great podcast.